and welcome to Rock the Casbah block 9. This block is one of our large blocks, which means we are going to do this design and then we are going to repeat it 4 times to make a super-sized block. You'll see that we're using pinks, a little bit of teal and our deep wine colour in this block. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we've got our cutaway stabilizer. We have wash away thread in the needle only, regular bobbin fill in the bobbin, and we have our embroiderer's felt sitting on top of the cutaway. We are now going to stitch colorway 1, which is going to secure that embroiderer's felt to your cutaway. If you can't access embroiderer's felt, you can do without it. I just find it makes better stitching to use it. You could also use a product called Parlon. And once that colorway has finished, I'm going to come through and using a larger pair of curved scissors, I want to trim away the excess fabric from my hoop around that stitch out. Once I've got that trimmed away, I'll reattach the hoop, lay my cotton fabric on top, so my main fabric, and still with the wash away, I want to then stitch colorway 2, which is going to secure that fabric to the project as well. Now the reason we're using wash away is because over the course of the project the fabric will suck in, which is what happens when you do stitching, and we don't want those threads showing at the end. Henceforth we use the wash away. I'm now going to change to my deep wine colored thread, and I want to come through and stitch out colorway 3, which shows where we're going to place the first piece of applique fabric. And the first piece of applique fabric that we are going to place is the, I guess leaf would be the best descriptor. And I'm using the deep wine in this case. I love this block because it is just so dramatic. Now, when you come through and add your fabric, make sure you leave enough overhang so that the fabric will overhang about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch into the seam area where the applique sits on a seam. This is going to make sure that when we put the block together, your seams are perfect. And we'll come through and we're stitching colorway 4 now, and I'll trim around that. You'll see I'm using my curved tip scissors here. They are just perfect for trimming, and they can get into all of the nooks and crannies of this design. So we'll come through and just trim around. And you can see there, wherever the seam is going into the, wherever the applique is going into that seam, I have left extra fabric. Colorway 5 is going to stitch the first of the flower elements, and I'm going to use my deep pink for both of these flower elements. So colorway 6, tacked that down, and then we do our trim away. The last applique piece is colorway 7, and it's our semicircle, which we are then going to stitch down the fabric using colorway 8 and trim away the excess. And I'll do my trimming here. Don't think that I'm this good at trimming. This actually took me a lot more time. I've just got it sped up a little bit. You want to take your time with trimming. Good trimming gives you a great end result. And then we're going to come through, and I've still got the deep wine loaded, and I'm going to stitch out colorway 9, which is going to start the satin stitching around our objects. Now, in this case, for the leaf that I'm doing here, I have used a diamond satin stitch. The diamond is still finishing off those edges, so we've got no exposed edges, but it's also just giving a little bit more interest as well. And one of the things that I do like about using the diamond pattern in this particular design is that it means that I don't then do the triple stitch around just to finish it off. So it's quite a nice one to work with. And now the stitching isn't done along the seam because we've already tacked that down, and of course we will be stitching that once the block is completed. So we're just stitching down that, and we're nearly done here with our wine colour. And then I'm going to change to my light teal, and the element that we're stitching here, I wanted something that was just a little bit more texturized. I didn't want everything to be fabric. So what I've done here is I've created my own fabric look using just thread. So it's a decorative fill stitch and a flower-based decorative fill stitch that we're then going to finish by satin stitching around. And for me, one of the joys of doing machine embroidery is being able to add texture to my projects. And of course that is done through thread. So you can see that that just looks a little bit of a lighter element. And now we'll come through and we'll satin stitch around that stitching just to finish it off. I do just love the way machines work. It's just such a soothing thing to watch. I'm not actually stitching on this greater speed. This block is one of the longer blocks because of the stitching that is coming up on our on the next part of the design, and altogether this block took 1 hour 20 to complete, so it is one of the longer blocks, but the look that it gives us is just, I think, worth it. Having said that, I've sped this up as I've edited the video, and my actual stitching speed was between 500 and 600 stitches per minute. So I'm now going to change over to the deep pink thread and colorway 11, and you'll see first here we're just going to do a regular applique stitch, and it is going to be just a satin stitch, and I'm using my standard triple stitch around that satin stitch just to finish it off. And then we are going to move on to that arc element. And what I've done here is something a little bit different. I've added extra texture by doing a stitch on top of the applique fabric. Once again, just making things that little bit different. And this is a crosshatch. And then I finished it off with as well as the satin stitch, we've then used decorative stitching around the top of that arc just to give it more interest as well. So here I'm coming through and we are doing our satin stitch. I'm using an 1175 needle. Throughout the entire project, I used about 3 or 4 needles. That's throughout the entire quilt. And as we come back, you'll see I'm now doing that triple stitch just to finish it off. And look, it's cute, but it just needs something that little bit more. So what I've done is I've created a leaf design that arcs around this arch and finishes the satin on the top there as well. Now this does take a lot more time to stitch, but just I think looks beautiful. At this time, while this is doing all its stitching out, it is a great time to prep your backing fabric. And by backing fabric, I mean our wadding and our backing fabric. I've chosen a quilt backing fabric because it is what I had on hand. If you don't have a quilt backing fabric on hand, just find some fabric that you don't mind using up. And you can make the back of your project look just as good as the front of your project by changing the colors that you use in your backing fabric as well. And it just adds that little bit more interest. Color wise, use whatever colors appeal to you. This quilt I've done with a white background and I've only used 4 colors: pink, dark and medium teal, and deep wine. As I've done my as I'm doing my second quilt in our monthly stitch along, I am using dark grey and citrus colours, and I am loving how it is looking. So you can see our design here is coming along more to the end. And it's just so soothing watching the machine work. It is amazing. It always blows my mind the way the engineer must think when they're putting this this machine together. Okay, almost at the end. When it comes to quilting, I have quilted mine with bobbin thread on the bottom because I found my bobbin thread was strong enough. You can quilt with regular cotton. You can also choose what fabric you want to quilt with, and of course just at the end it has to run out of bobbin fill, doesn't it? I've quilted with white polyester embroidery thread on the top of mine as well. Okay, so now I'm going to rethread my wash away thread into the needle, and I want to remove my hoop and turn it over. I'm going to lay a piece of wadding over that design and then stitch colorway 12 to secure the wadding to the design. And what you'll find when you stitch that out is that this stitch out is going to look slightly larger than that first set of stitch outs, and that's because of the sucking in of the design. Now, once again, we're going to get those larger scissors and trim away our excess wadding. We do not want that excess or any excess in our seams that we can avoid. Once we've done that, put our backing on the back and stitch out colorway 13 to secure. And then we are going to thread the machine with our white thread for quilting, and colorway 14 is going to stitch our entire quilting design. Now, the quilting design that we have used for this one is called Flames of Love, I am pretty sure. Yes, it's called Flames of Love. And not only do you get the custom quilting for this block, you get the quilting as its own block, and you also get it as a continuous quilting design. So there is plenty of ways that you can use this design for years to come. And we just come through, and what you've got to love about custom quilting is it does all of that work for you. And almost finished. And let's have a look at our finished project. So these are the 4 blocks. You can watch our video on joining the blocks together to see different techniques that you can use to join these blocks, but they come together and they are just forming a stunning block to finish. I do love the simplicity of this block, and as always, if you have any questions, please contact me at sales@JulieHallDesigns. Until next time, have a stitching day.